Hello again. Essay here. Just recently, they had a little plebiscite in Germany. Now, of course, if you're not German, you say, who cares? Yeah, well, hey, I get it. I mean, pretty certain if you live in Botswana, you probably don't care much about the local elections that happen in California either. But this election was somewhat important, and not just for the people in Berlin or Dusseldorf. Nope. Because you see, what's happening now in Germany is not just happening in Germany. It's happening in France, and it's happening in England, and wait for it, you ready? It happened here in the United States. And you say, wait, what? Yeah. And what I'm talking about is a changing of the guard. Because, for example, back when I was a wee little kid, I remember reading about the new frontier. And you say, what? Yeah, it was a slogan from JFK's era. And if you ever saw JFK's inaugural speech, you would have heard him use the phrase changing the guard to a new generation. And wait for it, when Bill Clinton became president, same thing. He also spoke about a new generation of political leaders. Well, the same thing happened here in the United States. And wait for it, it's going on right now in Germany. Now, but in order to get down to the nitty-gritty about exactly what I mean by this, I need you to see a snippet of video by our old friend Paul Joseph Watson. And let's just say this: he digs pretty deep down to those nooks and crannies. Okay, are you ready? Here we go.
Well, what do you want, the good news or the bad news? Tell you what, let's start with the good news. The AFD doubled its vote share, securing nearly 21% and won 151 seats in Parliament. A party that didn't even exist at the start of the migrant crisis is now officially the second largest political entity in the country.
Wir haben ein historisches Ergebnis eingefahren. Wir waren noch nie stärker im Bund. Wir sind zweitstärkste Kraft geworden als Alternative für Deutschland und wir haben uns als Volkspartei nun fest verankert.
The Greens did worse than expected. Angela Merkel's old seat flipped big for the AFD, and the establishment left SPD had their worst election result since World War II.
It's a bitter election result for the SPD. It's also an electoral defeat.
The AFD obtaining power in Germany was never going to happen overnight. But doubling their size in a single election cycle, having come from absolutely nowhere, can't be brushed off as insignificant. It's a massive accomplishment.
Wir haben unser Wahlergebnis verdoppelt innerhalb von 3 Jahren. Es ist großartig. Dementsprechend haben wir jetzt eine strategische Plattform, auf der wir aufbauen können.
With the conservative CDU now in power, but effectively powerless because they're going to have to align with the SPD. The AFD, which thrived in opposition to Merkel, will build even more support as a result of being the only true opposition to the establishment. German Zoomers, a plurality of whom voted for the far-left Die Linke party, and this tells you all you need to know about the Die Linke party, can't decide whether to have a hissy fit over the AFD's performance.
These are the anti-AFD protesters who have been waiting here and at the stroke of 5 o'clock local time launch these air raid siren noises.
Or celebrate the fact that AFD didn't win outright despite Elon Musk's support.
Elon Musk, fick dein Mars-Projekt. Scheiß kalt und Arsch weit weg. Hab Brandenburg entdeckt. Bianchi Bikes, Future Flex.
Yay! Our economy is collapsing. We can't afford to pay our heating bills. Young women across the country are afraid of going outside. And we might all be sent off to die in Ukraine. But hey, at least the party that says mean things didn't win.
Fick dein Mars.
The boomers, of course, can always be relied upon to act like lemmings and prop up the status quo, with those aged 70 and over myopically and steadfastly voting for the establishment parties yet again. German boomers solidly rejecting any immigration reform while their kids and grandkids are getting absolutely BTFO'd by migrants just goes to show how incredibly sadistic they are as a generation. Western Civ is just a boomer life support system at this point. Everything is calibrated towards ensuring the boomers are comfortable as they begin to shuffle off the mortal coil. It doesn't matter how terrible the conditions are which facilitate this, promises were made. The flip side being, of course, and I'm not trying to be morose here, it's a statistical fact, boomers make up a huge contingent of the country's voting bloc, but many of them won't be around for future elections. While the AFD's youth vote is almost double that of the establishment parties, there's plenty of white pills here, but that's not the only story. Now for the bad news, and come on, let's be honest. Germany's experiencing almost weekly terror attacks. Their crime rate is soaring. In many towns and cities, women don't feel safe walking around alone. Their economy's in a death spiral. And yet, in what was the largest election turnout since Germany's reunification, 80% of the politically active population chose not to vote for the only party that'll fix it. Not gonna lie, bit of a black pill. German election result map is basically the German migrant population map. Turns out diversity is actually a strength, if you're part of the political class who imported them all and can get them to vote against the interests of German natives. The conservative CDU has vowed to exclude the AFD from any coalition government. In the name of democracy, of course, because you can't allow the people who voted for a party that got the second highest number of democratic votes in a democratic election to enjoy, God forbid, democratic representation. Oh, no, no, no. The only way the AFD could have entered government is if the CDU reversed its firewall. The CDU joined forces with the AFD and then added the FDP or the BSW to take them over the 368-seat majority threshold. Problem being, neither the FDP or the BSW achieved the necessary 5% vote share to enter parliament. So that's not going to happen. So the almost certain outcome is that the establishment CDU will form an alliance with the establishment SPD, abandon their manifesto promises, eschew their anti-immigration stance, screw over everyone who voted for them, and basically Germany will be right back to where it started, dying on its arse. Yeah, bit of a black pill.
Ich werde mit allen in Frage kommenden politischen Parteien der demokratischen Mitte unseres Landes sprechen.
Over 10 million votes, a 21% vote share, 151 seats in Parliament, yet he's got the nerve to assert that they're not part of the democratic centre. Centre-right people taking the side of the commies for the 890th time. Yes, the two parties that emerged as the biggest losers on the night, the SPD and the Greens, will likely stay in government, while the party that got more votes than both of them has absolutely no chance of entering government. Gotta love European democracy. So the SPD, which bears much responsibility for Germany's current plight, is almost certain to play a role in the next government, while AFD, which won more seats, is shut out. Whatever your view of AFD, it's no wonder so many people think democracy across the West is rigged. The only upside is that the grand establishment coalition will likely collapse in a hurry, strengthening the AFD's position going into future elections.
Aber wenn das eintritt, liebe Freunde, das, was wir möglicherweise vorausgesehen haben, dass die CDU von der AfD abschreibt und da einen Wahlbetrug begeht an den eigenen Wählern, indem man mit den Linken koaliert, dann kann ich euch sagen, die nächste Wahl wird schneller kommen, als man denkt. Und dann werden wir die CDU als stärkste Kraft überholen. Das ist unser Ziel.
But given what's happening in Germany now, pretty much on a weekly basis, the hour is getting very late.
Okay, you saw that. Now, of course, the funny thing about Watson is that he was focused primarily on the competition between the CSU, aka usually known as the Christian Democrats, but I think now they just call themselves the Union Party, but whatever. And the SPD, which has been around, oh my God, I think since the very end of the old German Empire. And then, of course, the AFD, the alternative for Germany. Now, as you saw in Watson's video, the CDU end up on top of the heap. And you say, yeah, so what? I'm getting that part. But the funny thing about is that you saw the same thing happen in France and in Great Britain just recently. Because everyone who's familiar with Lord Starmer, knows that he only became prime minister because people got fed up with the Tories, basically making a rotten cheese sandwich out of everything that was going on in England. And yet, anyone who's been seeing how Lord Starmer has been making a mess of things say, okay, we don't like this guy either. And then, of course, in the meantime, waiting in the wings is a new generation of political leaders, namely Reform UK, led by our little quirky friend, damn, brain freeze, can't remember the guy's name now. I'll remember in a second. But yeah, they're waiting in the wings because they're a new generation of political leaders. And wait for it, you ready? In France, the same thing is happening there. Except the rules in the French legislature is really, really wobbly. Because I remember reading that way back during the Fifth Republic, where they said they changed a lot of the rules on how elections are done in France. It's not just a straight plebiscite, one man, one vote. They got a lot of weird rules in France. But anyway, in France, if you recall, they did have an election there. And the National Rally, Le Pen's party, was on the verge of going over the 50% mark. And then Macron, the current leader, he played a little fancy dance with all these various, radical leftist parties and told them to form a big old ball of earwax type coalition to basically keep National Rally from getting 50%, and it worked. But then old Macron found out the hard way that these leftist radicals that he partnered up with weren't going to stay silent. And in fact, they actually made all kinds of demands on Macron. They wanted all kinds of legislative initiatives. They wanted to pick their own prime minister of France and down the line. And Macron said, hit the road, Jack. And now they're trying to impeach the guy. But they don't have the votes. Yeah, it sounds like someone else who recently got impeached because some people were butthurt about an election, which I'm not going to get into. And in the meantime, National Rally, Le Pen's party, they're sitting in the background just waiting for Macron's government to totally implode. And then they have another election. Because remember, they don't have elections like in the United States. They have parliamentary elections, which means if you don't have a ruling majority in your legislature, boom, you have to have a snap election. Something we don't happen in the United States. No. If a party doesn't have a ruling majority in the House or the Senate, guess what? That's the way it is until the next House and Senate election. And whatever goes on in the House and the Senate doesn't affect the president. But it doesn't work like that out there in these parliamentary systems. And wait for it, now it's happening again, the same dynamic in Germany, because the guy who's currently will likely become the new German prime minister, this Merz guy, let's just say this, he's basically Lord Starmer with a German accent. And indeed, as you saw in Watson's video, this guy is already making a mess of things, because he made a bunch of political promises like, clean up the damn migrant crisis in Germany. And believe me, you think the migrant crisis, illegal aliens in the United States is bad? You don't know that half of it going on in Germany, because it's really bad there. Yeah, real bad, which I'm not going to get into. And now this clown Merz, who officially won the election in Germany, he's now backtracking, saying he ain't gonna do diddly squat about all these thugs and hoodlums and all these ne'er-do-wells who came into Germany doing all kinds of God knows insanity, whether it be armed robberies, rapes, murdering little kids in parks. Yeah, shit like that's been happening in Germany. and the public is enraged, and the damn Olaf Scholz, soon to be ex chancellor, didn't do squat about it. And now it looks like the new guy ain't gonna do squat about it either. In the meantime, the AFD, they said, oh, vote for us, we'll get rid of these migrants lickety split. Problem is, the AFD only came in second in this most recent election. And according to the current breakdown in the Bundestag, formerly the Reichstag, AFD, they won 83 seats. And you say, so what? Well, now they have 152 seats. Problem is, that places them right in the middle between the Social Democrats, Olaf's party that just got their little heinies whooped, and Mertz's party, the Christian Union. And of course, as you saw what happened in Watson's video, now those two clowns are going to form a coalition government to keep the AFD out. Except there's one small problem. As we are witnessing now in in France and in England, it's probably not going to be a lasting coalition government. And in the meantime, the AFD sitting there in the background waiting for these two knuckleheads to basically fall flat on their faces. Total face plant. And I'm thinking, Now, at this point, you're saying, what's that do with American politics? I'm getting that part. Because how many people remember the 2012 election? Between Barack Hussein Obama and Mitt Romney. Now, that election was a lot closer than people expected, but in the end, old Romney couldn't get across the finish line. However, in the aftermath of that election, the Republican Party, the party of old Bush and Cheney and we go further back in time, Reagan, they did an autopsy of that election and they discovered that their ideas were not popular with the damn voting public. And you say, yeah, that probably caused you to lose a few elections. And therefore, they decided, let's moderate our stance on a variety of issues, like social issues or whatnot. Of course, they still like tax breaks for their rich friends, but beyond that. But then a funny thing happened in 2015. And I think you already know what I'm talking about. Now, of course, some of you saying, oh, but Trump, he was just lucky because all those old school Republicans were just so awful. And I'm thinking, yeah, old Jeb Bush, yeah, talking about tired retreads. And Rubio, yeah, lightweight. And then, of course, all those others whose names I can't remember, forgettable. But one thing you have to remember is that what Trump did was that he basically pushed out the old, dead wood out of the Republican Party and brought a whole new group of people in and basically changed the entire complexion of the party. And no, I ain't talking about that complexion. I'm talking about ideas. Now, of course, some of those ideas were ideas that Republicans always believed in. And no, I'm not just talking about the taxes issue. No. I'm talking about things like, truth, justice, and the American way. And of course, if you remember the old Superman TV show, I don't have to explain that to you. But yeah, Trump said, yeah, we want safe streets. We want good paying jobs. We don't want all this weird craziness going on in the culture, like all that trans stuff and all that other weirdness with the damn woke stuff. Common sense things. things that you wouldn't think is a right-wing issue or a left-wing issue. It's just like normalcy. Problem is, at the time when Trump showed up, I guess no one realized how bad things had gotten under Barack Hussein Obama. And yet, despite everything, despite the damn dare use the phrase journalists, I think they're mostly just activists, radical activists, and then of course the deep state. Despite everything they threw at Trump, he slowly built a new coalition from the ashes of the old, what these call it, the new right that was originally born out of the 1960s. And by the early 21st century, it pretty much was exhausted, idea-wise. And thus, jump forward to the present day, you see a Republican Party that looks nothing like it was back during the days of Reagan. It doesn't even look like anything like it did under the days of old George W. Because Trump reformed the party and basically made it less like an old school stodgy Republican Party, more like a populist party. And now when you go over to Europe and see what's going on in Germany, going on in France and in England, you see the same thing. The only difference is that unlike in the United States where you had Trump, they say taking a pre-existing party and then just totally turning it inside out and reforming it, you have parties in Europe that basically came up from scratch. I mean, for example, the AFD, that party didn't exist 10 years ago. I think it came up 2019, 2020, somewhere around there. But yeah, it's a brand new party. Now, of course, the news media, and believe me, the news media is mostly made up of left-wing activists, so they're not going to tell you the truth to anything. They keep going on about the AFD being far-right and radical and neo-Nazi, but they're not. Now, what's the only difference between AFD and Trump is that the AFD has basically got a German accent. And you say, what? Yeah, they're just right of center populists. Now, of course, some of you saying, yeah, but Le Pen's party, they're not quite the same. And I will concede, the original old man Le Pen, when he started National Rally back in the 20th century, yeah, they were definitely a hard right-wing party. I mean, they were like borderline crypto-fascists, okay? But then that old man, went bye-bye, and his daughter showed up, and she moderated the party for the most part. And now, like the AFD, they're mostly just like Trump. They're a right of center populist party. And of course, Nigel Farage, I remember his name, out there in England with the Reform Party UK, same thing. And of course, anyone who remembers Brexit knows that you can blame old Nigel for that. Now, of course, some of you saying, yeah, but how's that applied to America? I just explained it to you. Trump basically, by almost like sheer will, reformed a major national party. I mean, few people can pull things like that off. And of course, some of you saying, well, didn't Reagan do that? And I'm thinking, technically, but if I remember correctly, it wasn't just Reagan, it was also Barry Goldwater. Because Barry Goldwater, he was basically the John the Baptist to Ronald Reagan's Jesus Christ, metaphorically speaking. And that's how they changed the Republican Party to the new right party that prevailed through the 70s and into the 80s and all the way up until the time of George W. And of course, Trump basically reformed the Republican Party again and now turned it into a populist party. Now, of course, despite everything that happened to Trump, including getting shot, he's now president. Now, of course, will Trump's reforms Republican Party outlast him? That's a very good question. because no man knows the future. And there's no guarantee J.D. Vance has the clout to keep it going. I mean, it could just all fall apart. And anyone who remembers Ross Perot and his Reform Party back in the 90s knows that, yeah, that can definitely happen. No joke. But when you look at what happened in the United States, and then look at the trends happening currently in Europe, you could probably say, in the next election cycle, the AFD will likely get a majority in the Bundestag, and then they'll probably end up ruling the roost. And then, just like here in the United States, you'll probably see a whole sea change in Germany, and likely for the better, for at least the people in Germany anyway. And of course, as I mentioned with Reform in the UK, and of course the National Rally, this, like I said, this is a big trend happening across Europe. Because people who have been paying attention to European politics know that for a long time, you had a bunch of globalist, left-wing radicals who basically had hijacked multiple countries and just been making a total mess of things. And to their credit, the Europeans have pretty much gotten fed up and had enough, and they're slowly, turning away from that nonsense. One election at a time. So let's just have to sit back and see what happens next. Because, as I said, this current coalition government that's forming in Germany, it's probably not going to last until the next election, which I think is not supposed to happen officially until like 2029. Yeah, that's the funny thing about about parliamentary system governments in Europe. If the bottom falls out of a coalition government, bingla boom, have a new election. Makes you wonder if we should have some system like that in the United States. Then again, maybe not. Doesn't sound like a good idea. I mean, could you imagine us having an election every time they try to have a coalition government in our legislature? Yeah. Talking about the very idea just gives you acid reflux. Just a quick reminder to all of you that my short story, The White Cat, is still available on Substack. The links are down below in the description. Join Margot Thompson, a beautiful stage actress and recent widow who finds salvation in the form of a white cat during a night of terror. And while you're looking up my oddball thriller, my book series, Glitch, is still available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other bookstores. The links are down below in the description. Join Ike and Sandra, a reluctant jewel thief and a kidnapped teen model who are on the run from the law across the American Southwest. Okay, well, that's all I have to say about this coming wave of right-wing populism that's slowly sweeping across Germany and these other European countries. And that's my opinion.